Hey everyone, welcome. Welcome to the June 2024 LAPPG meeting. I am Wendy Woodhall, and it's great to have you all here. Now in our 16th year, I've been saying 15th, and now I can switch to 16th. Very exciting. Woody, just stay on for a moment. I am going to welcome our presenter tonight. Super excited to have Scott Matics joining us, who is the Senior Product Manager at AJ Video Systems. Welcome, Scott.
Thank you. It's great to be here. Thank
Awesome.
you, Wendy and Woody.
Yay, I'm so glad you're here. This is one of our favorite times of the year. We get to celebrate our anniversary with AJA. And let's do a toast. If everybody has a little, I have my LAPPG mug. It looks like, Scott, what do you have there? You have a little soda?
I have a little wine.
Oh, Dr. Pepper.
Dr. Pepper. I got milk, got wine. We're all set. We're doing all stuff, all sorts of stuff.
I'm keying out here. There we go. Cheers.
Well, I got to show you guys what I'm having. Oh, thank you. Well, first of all, let's do a real toast. Is thank you to our members, our partners, and our friends for all of the support all of these 16 years. So thank you so much. Thank you, Joe. I appreciate that. And I am going to be enjoying, I started it a little early, but I have a whoopie pie. Doesn't that look good?
Nice.
I couldn't help it. I was like, oh, I have to start that. So I always like to have a sweet treat for special occasions. All right. Well, thank you so much, Scott. You go for it, and we will hop in. Please put your questions in the Q&A, and then we will, at the end, be asking them to Scott to answer them for us.
Thank you. Good afternoon, good evening, good morning, whatever it is, where you're at. I am Scott Matics. I'm in product management at AJA, and really happy to be here. And just want to talk a little bit about today about some techniques and products for creating high quality content using Thunderbolt solutions. So I'm going to focus mainly on Thunderbolt today, and I'll talk a little bit about some other things, other techniques, and then I'm going to talk a little bit about some of the AJA, what's coming, and some new things, and some things that you may be interested in. So I'm sure most of you know who AJA is, but just in case you don't, AJA was started in 1993 by an ex-Grass Valley group engineer named John Apt. And as a matter of fact, John still serves as the chairman of the company. The company is still family owned and operated out of Grass Valley, which is where I live, Grass Valley, the town. That's up here in beautiful Northern California. Today, the company's grown to over 200 employees, and we build a range of products that cover the gamut for broadcast infrastructure, capture, conversion, streaming, just about everything that's involved in infrastructure and production. We probably have a product for it. When I tell people that we assemble our products in the US, I sometimes get puzzled looks when I'm talking to somebody at NAB and I talk about that, and they're like, what do you mean? Nobody makes anything here any longer. Well, on the bottom floor of this building in the picture, we have a huge manufacturing and test facility, and the building behind that, which you can kind of see, is our engineering and design center where most of the people work. And the majority of everybody in the company works here in Grass Valley, but of course we do have sales and support folks that are around the world. We need this big manufacturing facility because we have more than 200 active products, and many people know us for our mini converters. And in fact, I first heard of AJA back in, I think it was 1995. I was in Orlando working for a integration company. And we were working on a big project, and we got this box of mini converters in from this company called AJA that I'd really never heard of before. And they were phenomenal. They were small, they were easy to install, and they were a lot less expensive than anything that was available at the time. We also have the full line of Open Gear products now. We have KeyPro digital VTRs that are used throughout the industry. And as a matter of fact, we just released the new KeyPro Go 2 at InfoComm this week. And that's what's shown in the picture there. So that's brand new. We've got routers and control panels. We've got a line of bridge products for NDI conversion and live video frame syncs, HDR image analyzers, HDR color boxes, which are becoming very popular, especially on set for applying the same LUT to different sources. And we released a new Dante AV system last year, which was kind of a new area for us. Well, my products are, some of them are shown here, and I cover the Kona and the Corbett PCIe I/O cards as well as the I/O products, and the I/O products are Thunderbolt oriented. I'm gonna focus a little bit on that. I'll talk about some other products that can go along with those from other manufacturers, but by and large, we'll talk quite a bit about the I/O products, including the TTAP Pro there, which is one of the giveaways tonight. As for the PCIe cards, I'm also going to discuss ways to use those in Thunderbolt environments. All right, so let's talk about Thunderbolt. So I'll be showing some historical slides and charts. I'll try to not have it be too boring. But keep in mind, this is going to be a little bit high level because the minutia of USB and Thunderbolt is a pretty complex weave, and it's hard to nail it down from a historical perspective because both USB and Thunderbolt have the same origins, but they've diverged to come back together at times over really 30 years that this technology has been a part of our lives. Mainstream Thunderbolt's now on Gen 4, although Thunderbolt 5 devices are expected this year. Thunderbolt technology was originally driven through cooperation between Intel and Apple that started around 2011. One major appeal of Thunderbolt was something that could combine several types of signals into a single physical connection that would include data, video, and power for peripherals. Thunderbolt 3 and 4 are capable of transferring data up to 40 gigabits per second, and they can power up to 6 devices with now up to 100 watts of power on a single connector. So I like timeline charts, especially when we're talking about technologies that have evolved and changed over time. This one is mainly from a website called Thunderbolt4.com, which is a really good resource for Thunderbolt stuff. But I added some dressing to it. I put some stuff in here because I wanted to fit things in that we can discuss here a little bit more clearly. The biggest confusion with both USB and Thunderbolt is what the connectors used, and these have changed over time. And for the most part, they've become better and more reliable over time. But there were some periods there where, you know, if you use them, you probably have the same opinion as me, as they weren't always easy to use. They weren't always reliable. And I remember when USB started to replace serial and PS2 ports on computers back in the 90s. And I remember the first time that I used USB for the first time, it was really an aha moment. It just worked more often than not. And better yet, it was hot pluggable, because you may remember that you couldn't unplug those PS2 mice and keyboards without locking up the system, or worst case, frying something. And I think I did that at some point. It only took USB 5 years, from 1995 to 2000, to go from 12 megabits per second to 480 megabits per second. And that speed increase was noticeable when transferring data. There was an obvious need for USB to not only get faster, but to also be able to provide power to peripheral devices that needed to be connected to it. USB 3 only marginally increased the speed, but more importantly, it provided almost a watt of power. Now, unfortunately, this power required some of those funky connectors that combined the USB port with these other power ports. So these cables and connectors were sometimes hard to figure out, and they were pretty fragile in a lot of cases. I had some hard drives and other things that had that funky little combination mini USB-C and a power connector that, you know, stopped working after a while, and it could have been the connector inside the device. Maybe they didn't seem all that robust. So we wouldn't see too much more innovation on the USB side of things for another 5 years or so. But in the meantime, Apple wanted to come up with a better connector design that could carry not only data and power, but also video, which they had a need for. So Thunderbolt was born, and that was actually originally named LAPPG is what they were going to call it. And I don't know why they decided to go with Thunderbolt, but I think that is a lot better than LAPPG. That actually was born in the 2010, 2011 timeframe. Speed was phenomenal on that. It was up to 10 compared to what came before. It was up to 10 gigabits per second. The power increased tenfold to 10 watts. And now this thing had support for video in the connector. And they used a new mini DisplayPort connector for this. And as a matter of fact, AJA, we offered our first I/O products in the line that utilized that connector in conjunction with Apple to provide an I/O device that would interface with these connectors at the time. By 2013, the speed had doubled to 20 gigabits per second, and the power had gone up another 10x to 100 watts. So life was good if you were a video editor and had the money to buy that type of a system in those days. So around 2014, USB started innovating again by offering a newer and much better connector. And that's what we know today as USB-C. And that could actually transfer USB data at 5 gigabits per second. I didn't add the power rating here because the truth of that's a little bit sketchy. These connectors were designed to support 20 volts and 3 amps or 60 watts. But it's unclear if the original USB-C cables and connectors could support that. And in fact, there were many that definitely could not support that. I had experience with some of those that they just simply would not power the devices at that level of power. In any case, it wasn't long before these technologies merged to an extent, with USB-C style connectors now replacing the mini DisplayPort. And Thunderbolt 3 and USB 3.1 kind of aligned to be able to support up to 40 gigabits of data and now 100 watts of power. So, you know, when this first came out, there weren't really many hardware systems outside of Apple's computers that supported this, and the standard was nicely backwards compatible with other video interfaces. This is really where we are today. Although Thunderbolt 4 is here, it didn't really improve things much for the purposes in media, and I'll go into that a little bit later. In fact, Thunderbolt 5 is on the horizon, and it promises 80 gigabits and 200 watts of power. So that's going to be a different story when it becomes commonly available, and that's either later this year or most likely next year. So I promise I won't spend as much time on the rest of those slides as that last one of history, and I left a lot of stuff out too. But at least with Thunderbolt 4, we've cleared up all the confusing Thunderbolt connector labeling. There's currently a total of no fewer than 7 different types of USB-C cables and markings on them that you have to worry about. And this can be critical when you're trying to match the cable with your computer's port to get the best performance. I found this chart on 9to5Mac's site, and it does a good job of showing all the variants. And some of these I'd never even seen before. And when I found this chart, I was a little bit surprised that some of these cables even had that marking. The good news is, as in Thunderbolt 4, all you need to do is to look for a cable with that lightning bolt on it. And if you have a laptop or other computer that's Thunderbolt 4 compatible, then you can use this type of cable and you're in business. So one thing that's interesting is that these new Thunderbolt 4 cables have some serious circuitry inside of them. This is an X-ray view of Apple's new $170, yes, $170 for a cable, Thunderbolt 4 cable, the one on the left, and that's compared to generic cables on the right, which are $10, $20, much less expensive. But the circuitry that's in that cable on the left is really what it takes to get the maximum performance out of a cable that's 3 meters long, basically. If you don't have that in there, your speed is going to be much less than what the spec allows for, and you have to pay for the privilege of having that. So talking about Thunderbolt 3 and Thunderbolt 4, these two are very close, and really as a media professional, do you need to be concerned with buying all Thunderbolt 4 peripherals today? Do you need to throw away all the Thunderbolt 3 stuff and bring in the Thunderbolt 4 things? Well, they're pretty much the same when it comes to speed and power delivery. They're both backwards compatible and forward compatible, and spec requires that. This means you're really going to not see much of a difference when using a Thunderbolt 3 versus 4 doing I/O and, for capture or with storage reads and writes. There's a couple of differences that I highlighted in yellow here, and that could be impactful depending on what you're doing. For instance, if you're purchasing a PCIe to Thunderbolt chassis, that allows you to use PCIe cards with Thunderbolt. I would go for the chassis being Thunderbolt 4, and most of them are, since the speed is double. I'll talk more about those in a minute. Video display is higher than Gen 3's 5K. It's up to 8K on Thunderbolt 4. There's a sleep mode, which really is just enabling the peripherals to wake up your machine when you engage with them. Thunderbolt 4 also has direct memory access security protection. That's a first for that, and that prevents a malicious attack from a connected PCIe device that bypasses the CPU and comes in that direction. It's probably not relevant for most of us, but I'm sure it makes sense in a lot of applications. With Thunderbolt 5 on the horizon, and that offers a doubling of speed and power, I would recommend just sticking with Thunderbolt 3 if that's what you're using today for your media I/O stuff and control applications, and then worry about upgrading down the road when you need to. So looking at the popularity of Thunderbolt, up until recently, there just really weren't that many options for Thunderbolt systems other than from Apple, which has been the leader in this technology. But in the past year, however, that number has swelled to over 150 different systems. And I did a search to find out, okay, who offers a Thunderbolt laptop, who offers a Thunderbolt computer, and I counted well over 150 of those. And so that's pretty recent. I mean, at 6 months, 8 months, a year ago, you probably wouldn't have seen that. Thunderbolt's also supported in all major operating systems, and we at AGA, we just added official Thunderbolt support for our products for Ubuntu and Rocky Linux. And that's going to be in the next release of our NTV2 drivers, which is coming out in a few weeks. Since it's so widely available, the prices of the higher class of Thunderbolt products has come down now. I mean, you can now get Thunderbolt 4 connectors on a mid-tier laptop without having to spend thousands of dollars on a system like that. Thunderbolt 5 is actually going to relax some of the certification requirements for PCIe hardware. And so that's going to, I think, cause a lot more of these systems to be available in the near future. And as a manufacturer, I mean, we may, anytime we can lessen the burden on us for doing certifications and things like that, it actually allows us to get products out a lot faster. So what can you do with Thunderbolt in media? So if we're focusing on portability, there's a lot of pros and cons for using a Thunderbolt setup for video capture and production. So at AJA, we've started using setups like what's shown here. Sorry for the poor picture quality. I took that at NAB. But this is what we do now for our demos at the major trade shows. And up until about a year ago, we would have probably just used an Apple tower and had PCIe cards installed in it to do these demos. So this year at NAB, we wanted to show a more portable arrangement. So we went with the MacBook Pro on the right there and a Dell higher end laptop, which by the way is running Linux, running Ubuntu. And we connected those via Thunderbolt to a Sonnet chassis that lets us do 2 separate Thunderbolt channels. And that allows us to show 2 different I/O cards. So there's actually 2 in that box. We also had an OWC Thunderbolt drive that was connected to the MacBook on the right there. In this whole arrangement, the Dell was doing ingest, the MacBook was running OBS and showing live production, and it also had the ability to do editing to and from the OWC drive. We had a lot of visitors, come in and look at this, and they were like, wow, I could pack all of this into a flight case, and I would have a pretty powerful and flexible portable system that I could take anywhere that I needed to. So as I mentioned before, the Sonnet chassis and OWC driver, both Thunderbolt 4, as a matter of fact. And I think in these cases, it really makes sense to make sure those are Thunderbolt 4, because you are getting some benefits that I showed in the highlighted areas, which impact those type of devices more than it does some of the other peripheral devices. And these products are excellent, by the way. And as much as I love the Sonnet Thunderbolt chassis, and OWC makes some really good ones as well, it is possible to go even smaller and more portable, and that's by using a self-contained I/O device, such as the one shown here. This is our I/O 4K Plus, and this is a pretty flexible device that takes the place of a Thunderbolt chassis and I/O card. This unit, as the name implies, works up to 4K resolution. This model is the big brother to the I/O X3, which is even smaller, and it works at 3 gig HD. Both the I/O 4K Plus and the I/O X3 include 4 bidirectional SDI ports, HDMI in and out, reference monitor, as well as linear timecode ports. They have 16 channels of embedded audio per each SDI port, and then 8 in and out of analog audio channels. Both devices include 2 Thunderbolt 3 connections, and we're actually showing the I/O 4K Plus at Infocom this week, connected to a Dell Windows laptop, and we did that at Infocom because our booth's smaller and space is at a real premium. So we're actually taking advantage of the ability to downsize something like this. So here's some pictures of the I/O X3 front and back. This unit's a little smaller than the I/O 4K Plus. It's got a plastic enclosure, which makes it weight less. Since the I/O 4K Plus runs at a higher resolution, it does have a fan inside of it, and it can get a little bit warm. We joke about, putting your coffee cup on top of it to keep it warm. It's not quite that bad. This unit, the I/O X3, runs a little bit cooler, and it is quieter. Not that the I/O 4K Plus is loud by any means, but if it gets really hot, that fan's going to kick on. That doesn't happen with this unit. One thing to point out with the I/O X3, and I'll show this in an application slide in a few minutes, this unit can do quad split out of the HDMI output to provide for a 4-channel multi-viewer for your confidence monitoring. So that's a pretty neat feature on this unit. Not to be left out, the little brother to both the I/O 4K Plus and the I/O X3 is our TTAP Pro. And this device is an inexpensive, single channel, and extremely compact box with Thunderbolt 3, 12 gig SDI output, and an HDMI 2.0 output. Same broadcast level quality as the other devices, but it's in a even smaller package for those who, if you don't need as many inputs or outputs, you can go even smaller and less weight. So circling back to the Thunderbolt chassis, this is really interesting from a build your own solution perspective. There's a lot of benefit to a configuration like that, especially if you need functionality that's only included in our PCIe cards. You can do other things in those cards that you simply can't do in a self-contained unit. These enclosures start around $1,000, and you can fit 1 to 3 full-size cards depending on the model. And what's really nice is they have independent Thunderbolt channels per card. So you can either run them using one PC to get full I/O capability, or you can split them like we did at NAB in that other picture to perform different functions on each machine. They're not as lightweight or portable as those little compact I/O boxes, but they aren't too big or heavy either. They're about the size of a small desktop tower. You can see our newest card, the Kona X, is in there. And what you can't see, there's actually a Kona 5 card that's installed in the other slot to the right of the Kona X. So being able to run 2 PCIe cards via Thunderbolt, the single cable to your controlling machine, that is really powerful. So if we look at all of these solutions, they've got their pros and cons, and it really comes down to how much power and how much portability that you need. Traditional towers that run the PCIe cards in the slots they're more powerful and expandable, and they can have more powerful GPUs added as well for the added speed and much lower latencies in some cases. But they can be pricey, they're big, heavy, and can be hard to repair. The BYO Thunderbolt, the little PCIe or chassis, they're compact, they're pretty easy to deal with, and they're more flexible. But even with Thunderbolt 4, the bus speed is going to be a little bit lower now because you're paying a tax of doing that PCIe to Thunderbolt conversion. It is going to get faster with Thunderbolt 5, but it is still a little bit slower than running these in a full-size tower. The self-contained systems, they're even smaller. They can be powered from 12 volts, so you can make them, completely mobile. They can run warm, and they do require a power supply, brick, or DC power, one of the two, and that may not be ideal for every situation. So pros and cons for all of them, and either solution is really great for anybody depending on what you're doing. So I've got a few application slides just to briefly go over. I won't spend too much time on these. These are all on our website, and they include more information on the website. As you can see here, this is a portable 4K live production system that's being shown using our IO 4K Plus. And this is something you may have on a multi-camera shoot, running with something like vMix or Telestream Wirecast or OBS. You've got a Key Pro Ultra sending 4K signals in via SDI. You've got HDMI camera output, audio in, monitoring out, and this is a full production system for writing to a Thunderbolt disk. So this is a really powerful arrangement that's very flexible and highly configurable. This one was done in conjunction with Ross Video, and they actually recommend this configuration for use with their expression graphics system. And this makes use of that built-in quad split multi-viewer that I mentioned before that comes out on the HDMI port. So the quad split to use as a multi-viewer, that's a really popular option for the IO X3. A lot of people use that, but note that that's only on the IO X3. We don't have that on the IO 4K Plus, and that's mainly because 4K on the IO 4K Plus uses all of the available frame stores in that unit, and so there wasn't enough to do a quad split. But we are actually looking at ways to implement that. This one's a traditional live editing system with audio voiceover, streaming out using our Hela Plus device. I would say that this app shows one of the most popular uses for the IO X3 or the IO 4K Plus if you happen to need 12 gig. And then using that application node, I want to talk about a real world example that I learned about recently. This is an application for live events that goes along with that previous slide. This one's actually not on the website yet, and please excuse my basic non-marketing approved drawing that I threw together here to try to make the point. But this is a really interesting application that I was talking to a customer a few months back, and they were explaining to me what they did. This is actually in Europe, and this person covers bicycle races, and he has a miniature little tiny van that he takes to these locations. And because you've seen, road racing, there's not much room. The bikes are all over the road, and there's just not, there are people on motorcycles filming it and all of this stuff, and there's just not a lot of room. Sometimes the event they actually use helicopters to record the riders at different points, and the helicopter is sending their signals to a circling small airplane up in the sky. So the user of this application, he actually is very often in the plane, and they've shoehorned him into a very small area of the plane, and he's using an IO X3 just like in the slide down in the bottom right hand corner there, and he's doing live editing. So not much space required to do a full live edit, live stream, as well as create the race overviews that he cuts and sends out to television or to YouTube or to internet broadcasts. He does all that using the IO X3, and he even came up with a clever way of mounting the units in the van. Wasn't enough room for a rack mount, so he had to build his own mount to go in there. And he also built some things to hold the Thunderbolt connectors in. One thing I didn't mention that's a downside of the Thunderbolt with the USB-C connectors, they can pop out. They're not held in, naturally by screws. Although companies like OWC and Sonnet, they do have solutions, but this guy actually made his own. It was pretty robust. I think the cable would like come apart before this thing would come off that he made. And so I thought this was a pretty interesting application for Thunderbolt. And I would think the only way to do something like this would be to use a self-contained device, like in this case, the IOX3, because there's just really not enough space to do it any differently. We get asked a lot about audio punch-in, and until recently, Avid sold a version of our IO4K Plus, which you may have seen, that was called the DNX IV. This had a built-in mic amplifier and XLR input on the front. That's the main difference from the IO4K Plus. And you can actually do this with an IO4K Plus, but you would need to add an outboard mic amp. Avid sold quite a few of these, and they recently decided to get out of some of the hardware sales, so they decided to stop selling this, but you can still find them at some distributors or on eBay, or you can just get an IO4K Plus and you can add that microphone preamp and use that. Media Composer has some secret sauce that was designed to work with this, and it was a pretty popular solution for a good many number of years. So we also get asked a lot about metadata and QCing metadata, making sure that ANK and HANK metadata is present in video signals. And so this is one of our, what's coming slides. And in the next version of our NTB2 software, which is going to be releasing in a few weeks, you'll be able to confirm that ANK metadata is present on the SDI line. And this will work with any of our cards or devices that support closed captioning, and that's most of them. Basically, in our control room application, which comes free with the products, you'll be able to confirm metadata is present, and you can even look at it. That metadata includes captioning, SCSI triggers, time code, Dolby Vision metadata, things like that. Now, down the road, we're going to add the ability to read and process metadata on HDMI and via IP connections, which are being asked quite a bit for camera positioning metadata. And so the intent is to be able to utilize this for all of that. And I think you'll find that it's going to be a lot less expensive to do this with the AJA product that you may already own and the software that comes with it than to go out and purchase specialized equipment to do this. This could actually be done in every edit bay that you have without having to go out and buy a bunch of analysis equipment. Here's a look at the control room screen for managing the metadata. We're going to be adding support to this to our SDK, and that's going to allow more uses for the metadata down the production chain. The way this works is as we're ingesting, we're creating an MKB file that contains all of the metadata that we find on the pipe. And then most formats do not support all the metadata, so we had to do this in something that we could package it in. We're eventually going to put this functionality into our SDK, which will allow you to take that MKB file and then utilize that metadata however you want to in other sources, transcode that, embed that, create sidecar files, and do other things with that as you need to. So this is pretty exciting. I want to remind you that AJA has a nice complement of free tools. Our system test application has kind of become the de facto industry standard for measuring drive performance, and we've added some nice features to that lately. Data Calc's a great app for iOS and Android that can help you with storage requirements that are based on runtime. So you put in your runtime, it'll tell you how much storage you need for a given format. Our control room application, I mentioned before, it's really powerful. It's free to use with our products. It's a recorder, transcoder, multi-function tool that can also talk to most tape machines. I don't know if any of you are still dealing with tape machines. We do have quite a few people, especially in Asia, that are doing that. And that's pretty important for anybody that needs to use tape machines in editing. And it's even more important because Apple and Adobe have now deprecated that functionality out of their editing systems very recently. As shown earlier, this the control room tool is also going to be the thing that allows you to monitor that metadata in the stream. So these are all available on our website at that link, and they're free to download and use. The next version of software that I control, it's our NTV2 application software and the SDK that goes along with that. We're releasing version 17.1 in July. So if you're using our products, be on the lookout for that. There's a lot of new functionality, including that metadata feature. We now officially support Rocky and Ubuntu Linux with Thunderbolt. It kind of worked before, but now it's fully supported, officially supported, and works a lot better now. There's a bunch of other stuff in the release, including that new metadata toolset, a new plugin architecture that we're using to enable a virtual Kona cloud solution. And don't really have time to talk about that today, but we are working with Amazon on having the ability to have a virtual Kona card in AWS cloud and utilize that just as if it was a connection on the ground. So that's pretty exciting. We're also have a lot of improvements for the IOX3 and for OBS software, and we're an open source contributor to the OBS software. So one last thing. If you're familiar with our control panel software, you'll know that it's a bit, shall I say, dated looking. It's been around for a while and it hasn't changed much in it looks. Well, we're working on an all new control panel, and that's going to allow for virtual channels for some of our IO devices that'll make a single card look and act like multiple cards. So we've been asked a lot for this, and it's finally coming. This is going to be in beta tests later in the year, and we'll offer both the old one and the new one for quite a while. They'll live side by side until the new one is feature complete. And if you've used our Colorbox product, you'll notice that this new UI takes a lot of cues from that. So things are going to look and work a whole lot better for this. So that's it for me, and I really want to thank everybody. I want to thank you, Wendy and Woody, for virtually hosting me, and be happy to take some questions.
Awesome. So much great content. Thank you for all that. I want to go through these real fast because we only have about 5 minutes. Megan is saying this can be, and she's saying, I'm really interested in 80 gigabyte Thunderbolt.
That and that is Thunderbolt 5. So that's the spec has been finished. Intel actually released it, I think, last October. Everything that I'm seeing that keeps saying products are going to be arriving in 2024. I don't know if that means late in 2024. I think, in probably product management marketing speak, that probably means 2025. But it is coming pretty soon, and it's really exciting.
Terrific. So this is from Kevin Lawrence. It says, cable length and cable length and reliability battle hardened, especially with high current draw and possible cable pinching. Field hard us. See what that means.
I think he might be asking about the reliability of cables at certain distances, and that is the problem, right? I mean, that's why that Apple cable is $170, because they put all the circuitry in there, and they even made the little connecting cables that go into the circuit board of a special material and a certain size, and they all had to be the same because when testing they were running into problems with it. And so, basically, if you pay for the more expensive cable, you're probably going to get the spec but that is definitely one downside to Thunderbolt is anything over 3 meters, you're probably not going to see the speeds that are promised.
Got it. Okay. And Denton Cordell, is there a way to look on your computer to see if you are equipped with the ability to use Thunderbolt?
I would take a look at the USB-C connection on the side of your computer because it's going to have that lightning bolt beside of it. And you may have to get a magnifying glass out to look at it. I've got, on the Apple machines, they probably support it if it's a recent MacBook. On Dells and HPs and things like that, they may support it, but they always put the symbol on there, and that lightning symbol, if you see that, that's Thunderbolt 4. And I think Thunderbolt 5 is going to have the same signal. So if you see that, it should be supported.
Okay, great. And Richard's asking, what mic preamp do people use with the IOX?
There's a couple of USB mic preamps that can be used. I don't have the models handy here, but there's a couple of popular USB mic preamps that should work pretty well. And as a matter of fact, I think Avid even recommends one now. But yeah, I think if you just look up USB mic preamp, there's a handful of those that are available, and the one I'm thinking of is like $100 or something like that. It's not that expensive.
Okay, and from our buddy Bill Dawson, can OBS to 4K?
I believe so. I think that it either is in the next release of OBS or they've already released that. I think I'm pretty sure that is. I'm not too involved on the OBS side of development. We have a couple of developers that take part in it, but I'll try to find out, and I'll somehow follow up with that.
Okay. And this is from Will, do you think USB and Thunderbolt will ever merge into one standard?
I think they kind of have, to be honest with you. I mean, the problem before, it was two different connectors. And now that there's two connectors, the big difference is, for your typical USB connectivity, you don't necessarily need a video channel on that because it's mainly data. So that's the big difference. And that is what's dictating the length of the cable and everything, because you have this really high bandwidth that's required for 8K video. And you don't necessarily need that in USB for data only. Those cables are really cheap. So I think, you can plug those right into your Thunderbolt port on your laptop and it'll work. You can just hook up a hard drive and it'll be pretty fast. It'll be, 40 gig. So, in my mind, they've kind of merged because they use the same connector. They use the same connection point on most of the laptops that support it. So I kind of think we're there.
Cool. I have three more real quick. Does AJ have a recorder that could record DPX image sequences, for instance, 4K?
I don't think so. Yeah, I don't think the Key Pro does that. Yeah.
Okay. Is there any way to run Thunderbolt 2 on Thunder 4?
It should be backwards compatible. So you should be able to do that. The connector might be a problem. There are adapters that you can get on Amazon and stuff, and I think they probably work. I wouldn't bet my life on it, but it should be possible to do that because in theory this stuff is backwards compatible. It's supposed to be by nature of the spec.
Okay, and I guess that answers, I think, David Gray's, which is, will Thunderbolt 5 be backward compatible?
Yeah, absolutely. Yep. As the spec has transitioned into the higher speeds, it's actually gotten better with backward compatibility, especially between 3, 4, and 5. And so it should be completely backwards compatible. You may run into a problem with the power on the peripherals because when you plug a Thunderbolt 4 device into a Thunderbolt 3 port, it goes down to Thunderbolt 3 specifications. So you don't get the faster speed on the slower port, but you should get data transfer and video transfer between those two, just maybe not at the highest rates.
Got it. Perfect. Well, Scott, thank you so much. I'm looking at everybody and their comments and how much they appreciate you explaining all of that. It's a lot of stuff, and we really appreciate you succinctly and clearly explaining it all to us. What a nice anniversary present you've given us. So thank you. And be sure to catch up on past meetings. Subscribe to our YouTube channel. This is an old graphic when we had 70 videos. I think we are probably at about 100 now. So lots and lots of videos. Make sure you subscribe and then click notifications so you will know when new videos drop. And be sure to connect with us on Facebook and Instagram, Twitter, and LinkedIn. And a huge thank you to our partners, our platinum partner, AJ Video Systems, our gold level partner, Adobe Blackmagic Design, OWC, Zeiss, Frame.io, and our silver partners, Isotope by Native Instruments, SGO, and Avid. And we have a lot of other amazing companies that support us. We have supporting partners, media partners, and community partners. So please reach out to these companies. Let them know that you know about them from LAPPG. Thank you, everybody, for partners, friends, members, for all of the support. AJA and Scott, thank you so much. And we'll see you guys next month. Be on the lookout for a newsletter with the meeting information in a few weeks.